Hi, shalom, friends. In the field of rabbinics, in order to actually be ordained as a bona fide Orthodox rabbi, you're supposed to be proficient in, at the very least, one of the four major sections of Jewish law. Actually, you're supposed to be proficient in the first one, a lot of the second, and pretty much a scattering of the third and fourth. Obviously, there are tremendous Torah scholars who we all look up with great respect and admiration, who are proficient in all four. And then, just like in medicine and in law, there are subspecialties. There are rabbis that are incredibly learned when it comes to business law, some which specialize in marriage and divorce and contracts, and others that are in medical ethics and so on and so forth. But for a rabbi to actually be proficient in all four categories is much more rare today than it was some 100 years ago. So I want to tell you a story about a rabbi that not only was proficient in these four, but in another field as well. Because in rabbinic school, they used to say, even if you're proficient in the four sections of Code of Jewish Law, Shulchan Aruch, there's another code that you have to master, and that is the code of common sense. So sometimes a person might know much of law, in fact, be a genius in law, but lack the common sense, the common touch, not understand the ordinary person. Everything is seen as a legal challenge, but they don't understand empathy, sympathy, unwritten feelings, and so on. But the rabbi I'm going to tell you about, Rabbi Meiselish, who I believe was the chief rabbi of Lodz, Poland, between the First and Second World War, was not only proficient in all four sections, but he was proficient in common sense. In fact, he was a specialist in common sense to the extent that he really understood the nature and character of man. Okay, enough of an introduction. Here's the story. One day, the rabbi is sitting in his office, his study, and a young man comes in very, very distraught. It was Sunday morning, and the rabbi says, "How can I help you?" And he says, "A terrible thing happened to me." He says, "I come from this and this city, and I'm just within 6 months of my marriage, and my father-in-law is in business, and I too want to be in business. So he extended to me a certain amount of money. Well, I'm making up the currency, 100 rubles, and he said, travel to Lodz and see if you could find something to invest in. In the meantime, my wife and I decided to take all of our dowry and to put it into this one investment. So I came to Lodz last Thursday night, and I have 500 rubles, and I have to invest in this. I checked into a local hotel or motel, and I felt very uncomfortable because I have this tremendous sum of money with me, and I really don't know how safe it is, especially on the Shabbat. I hope to be in the synagogue much of the time. I don't want to leave it unprotected in my room. So I took the money, actually it's in ruble notes. I took it with me to the synagogue, and after prayers I said, is there any local businessman who has a good reputation and who understands business? And they gave me a Reb Shimon. I go to his business, and I introduce myself. My name is Beryl from this and this place. I am here for next week. There's going to be a convention. I'm going to do some investing. I have 500 rubles, but I know no one in the city who I could trust. So I was thinking, being that you're a business person, you probably have a safe where you keep your valuables. And I was wondering, would you be so kind to allow me to keep my 500 rubles in your safe? This Reb Shimon welcomes me, says, "You know no one in the city?" "No, I don't." "You know what? I'll do better than that. I'd like you to be my Shabbos guest. I have a nice house, I have a guest room, and why don't you come 2 hours before the Sabbath? I'll show you your room, and I'll open up the safe. You could deposit it yourself, and you'll have a very restful and peaceful and enjoyable Shabbos." And I thanked Hashem, and I thanked him 2 hours before Shabbos, I came to Reb Shimon's house with my rubles. He welcomed me very graciously. He took me to his study. He opened up his safe. I put it in. And he said, "You'll be my Shabbos guest." And he said, I indeed had a very nice Shabbos. He was a very good host. And there were guests, and the meal was fine. But I was, of course, a little bit apprehensive because next week, starting from today, I have to start going around to find somewhere to invest my money. After prayers, I go to him and I say, "Reb Shimon, I want to thank you for your tremendous hospitality. Can you please give me back my 500 rubles? And that's when I got my first shock of my life, not of the day. He looked at me strangely. He said, "What 500 rubles?" I said, "Shimon, I gave you 500 rubles before Shabbat. I saw you, and we both saw each other put it into the safe, and I'd like to take it." And he says, "Why are you babbling such nonsense? You came to me, you were my Shabbos guest, but you didn't give me any money." So I look at him for a moment to see if this is his idea of a joke, but he is very serious. I say, "Shimon, this is not a joke, this is not funny, I trusted you." And he says, "Look, I don't know what you want, but I have no time for you." And he kicked me out of his house. Rabbi, and he breaks down. What am I going to do now? Foolishly, I didn't have any witnesses with me. I trusted him. No one knows me in the town. Everyone knows Shimon as the business person. How am I going to get back my money? It's my word against his. And he began to cry. Well, Rabbi Meislish, who understood human nature very well, saw that this man was absolutely telling the truth. And he thought deeply for a moment, what can he do? How can he get Shimon to admit? And after a couple of moments of deep thought, he says, "I think I can help you. I want you to stay in my office, and I want you to repeat those accusations in front of him, and I will know what to do." Meantime, he gave him some tea to compose himself, and the rabbi sent a messenger to Reb Shimon, asking him urgently to please come to his office. Reb Shimon comes to the office. He glances at the stranger. He already knows what's going to happen, but he says, "Rabbi, you called me?" And the Rabbi says, "Yes, Rabbi Shimon. This gentleman says that you owe him some money." And Shimon looks at the gentleman and he says, "Rabbi, you know me for many years. This guy is a stranger. I don't owe him anything." So the rabbi says to the stranger, I think I called him Beryl, "Beryl, tell Shimon what you told me." And he gets very, very emotional. He says, "Shimon, I trusted you. I was your Shabbos guest. I gave you the rubles." And Shimon is listening cold-bloodedly in front of the rabbi, and he says, "Rabbi, he's not well in his mind. He was my Shabbos guest, but he gave me no money." And when he says that, the guest says, "How could you steal from a young newlywed?" And he's like emotionally, he's like really distraught. Rabbi Meislish looks at Shimon and says, "Look here, he's very upset. Why don't you give him something just to get rid of him?" So he looks at the guy and he says, "You know what? I will give you 20 rubles. That's a lot of money. I don't owe you anything, but you're so distraught and clearly you're not well. So here's the 20 rubles. I want you to just leave town." He says, "Rabbi, I'm not taking 20 rubles. 20 rubles is not 500 rubles. He's stealing from me." Shimon is looking, and the rabbi says, "Look, Shimon, you could see that he's really upset. He's really, really upset. Why don't you give him 100 rubles, and I'll make sure that he leaves town by tonight." Shimon looks at the rabbi, looks at it, he says, "Okay, I don't owe him anything, but in order to help solve this issue and that he should leave this town, I'm willing to give 100 rubles today, now. Just let him leave." When Rabbi Meislish heard that, he stood up, shouted at Shimon, "You thief! You scoundrel! How dare you in my office lie to me? If you do not confess that you stole that 500 rubles, I will publicly denounce you from the pulpit and say, people cannot trust you, you are a thief." He was shocked. "Rabbi Meiselish, why do you accuse me of that?" "I am not accusing you. I am telling you you stole it, and I am giving you a way out. Otherwise, I will..." And when he said that, Shimon said, "Okay, Rabbi, it's true. It's true. I promise within an hour I'll bring back the 500 rubles. Please don't say anything to people. I have a reputation, and the evil inclination just overcame me." Now the stranger Beryl is watching this miracle in front of his eyes. But before Shimon leaves, he turns to the rabbi, says, "Rabbi, I just have one question. How did you know I took the money? It was my word against his. Why did you believe him more than me?" The rabbi looked at him bitterly. He says, "You gave yourself away when you said, 'I know you for many years.' And I do know you for many years. Every single time there's a need, whether it be to marry off an orphan or to pay for firewood for the school or to fix the synagogue, I come to you and I say, 'You're a rich man, you're a wealthy person, I expect you to give this and this,' and you bargain with me. And I usually walk away with a donation which is paltry, a couple of rubles when you should be giving so much. Suddenly, in front of my eyes, there's a total stranger who you know nothing about, and you're willing to give him 100 rubles? No. That did not come from goodness of the heart. That came from guilt. And I realized right away that you stole the money." Well, this rabbi was gifted with a lot of insight into the character of man. Actually, it's a pleasant story, and I hope you enjoyed it. But I believe that there is also, from every story, some lessons to be derived. And I would share with you one lesson that I derived from it. And that is, ask yourself, you're walking window shopping. Or perhaps you're not window shopping today anymore. You're sitting in front of windows, Google, Amazon, and you're just looking at different things, and you have in mind a certain item, and then you see a review, and then the item slightly more expensive, but better reviews. And do you hesitate? Or do you just say, "You know what? Okay, it's a little bit more than I thought, but it has better reviews or it looks more exciting," and you just buy it. You don't even think twice. If you're unfortunately gifted with impulse shopping, you know exactly what I'm meaning. That sometimes you just see something and it looks nice, and there is some need, though not crucial, and suddenly you're buying it. But then imagine you're looking for a mezuzah, and you found a site that has $37 for a kosher mezuzah, and then there's right next to it, but a much nicer mezuzah is $57. How many of us go immediately to that higher price because it's nicer? Or do we sit and bargain to ourselves? Well, this is kosher, maybe not so kosher, but a little bit kosher. Ask yourself, where are you spending your rubles? Is it on a dinner and then a better dinner? Or is it on a siddur and a more fuller type of a prayer book? There was a time when people bought books and subscribed to magazines. Well, would you do the same for Jewish books and Jewish periodicals? I'm not trying to challenge anyone. I'm just saying it's interesting the way we think. But if we find it easy to spend money on holiness, that's a really good sign. If we find it easier to spend money on a sweater than on a pair of tzitzit, that's a sign that we need to be reordering our priorities. Shalom, and may you always make the right decision.